Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Crowd Confidence. Today we're diving into powerful tips to build unshakable confidence and stand out boldly. Successful people understand something most people ignore: the power of silence. Speaking less is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not fear, it's focus. When someone has a clear understanding of who they are, where they're going, and what they're building, they don't need to prove anything with their mouth. Their results speak louder than words ever could. Most people speak to be heard, but successful people speak to be understood. And that requires fewer words, because when you are rooted in purpose, you don't explain everything, you demonstrate. You'll notice that truly successful people don't waste time in unnecessary arguments. They don't try to win every debate. They don't try to insert themselves into every room. That's because they already know what room they're building. They're not desperate for validation because their validation comes from within. You will never find a truly successful person trying to convince everyone. They've left that game behind. They operate from conviction, not confusion. When you operate from conviction, you don't need the approval of the crowd. You don't chase it, you attract it, and what you attract determines what you sustain. When you see someone always talking, always reacting, always responding, it's usually a sign of internal noise. But successful people have learned to quiet the noise. They've learned that every word spoken must serve a purpose. They've learned that time is currency and words are investments, and you only invest where there's a return. They speak less because they've already decided that their life must be lived by design, not by debate. They have too much vision to keep stopping at every question mark. That's why they're not distracted by opinions. They are governed by principles. They are not managed by trends. They are led by truth. When your vision is strong, you don't have time to gossip. You don't have time to compete. You don't have time to explain your every move. You're too busy building. That's why successful people are misunderstood. Because people mistake silence for weakness. But silence is often strategy. It's the discipline of maturity. It's the patience of a builder. You cannot construct anything great if your mouth is always moving. Because what you speak, you release, and what you release, you are responsible for. Successful people weigh their words. They understand that every statement shapes perception, and perception impacts influence. So they're not careless. They are intentional. There's also something else about silence. It listens. And listening is the key to wisdom. Most people talk too much to learn. They interrupt answers with opinions. But successful people know how to listen beyond the words. They hear motives, they hear direction, they hear opportunity, they hear caution. They don't speak because they're watching. They don't speak because they're discerning. They don't speak because they're gathering. And when they do speak, it's precise, it's powerful, and it produces change. Success isn't loud. Success is quiet. It's focused. It's measured. It's disciplined. That's why the greatest movements in history didn't begin with noise. They began in silence, planning in silence, praying in silence, fasting in silence, building in silence, and then emerging with results. That's why truly successful people are often underestimated. Because while others are shouting, they're sowing. While others are trending, they're training. While others are reacting, they're refining. They speak less because they are saying more with their actions. They speak less because they are doing more with their time. They speak less because their silence is strategy. It's not that they don't have anything to say. It's that they've learned when to say it, how to say it, and why it needs to be said at all. Words were never meant to be thrown around casually. They were designed to build, to shape, to guide, to transform. They are tools in the hands of the wise, but in the mouths of the careless, they become weapons of destruction or distractions from purpose. Successful people have learned to treat their words as instruments, not ornaments. They don't talk just to fill silence. They speak to fulfill assignments. That is why when they speak, something shifts, something moves, something is built. Every great builder understands the importance of tools. You don't waste them, You don't misuse them. You don't play with them. You sharpen them. You study them. You understand the right tool for the right task. That's how successful people approach their speech. They don't say everything that comes to mind. They don't give free access to their thoughts. They weigh their words like gold because they know that once a word is released, it cannot be taken back. You can apologize, but you can't reverse impact. So, the wise person uses words with caution. The successful person understands that words can unlock doors, or close them forever. When immature people speak, they are trying to impress. But when mature, successful individuals speak, they aim to impact. They're not trying to be clever. They're trying to be clear. They're not concerned about applause. They're focused on alignment. Words to them are not performance. They are precision. They know that a single phrase said at the right time can change a life, shift a business, start a movement, or rescue a soul. So they are careful with timing. They are careful with tone. They are careful with truth. We live in a noisy world. Social media has made talking cheap and constant. But successful people haven't joined the circus. They don't waste their words on every trend, every fight, every comment, every headline. Why? Because they know that energy flows where attention goes, and attention follows speech. If you keep talking about things that don't align with your assignment, your words will scatter your focus. But if you discipline your speech, you preserve your power. That's why wise people are hard to provoke. They don't react to everything. They don't argue with everyone. They don't respond just to be heard. They speak when it builds. They speak when it blesses. They speak when it births something greater than the moment. When successful people speak, it's usually after they've listened, observed, evaluated, and prayed. They don't just throw words like confetti, they aim them like arrows. Their speech is not reactionary, it's visionary. It points toward their goals, their values, their future. That's why you won't see them gossiping. That's why you won't see them complaining. That's why you won't see them explaining their every move. They know that words shape environments, so they build carefully. They speak only what matches their direction. They don't use their tongue to tear down what their hands are trying to build. People who waste words often waste time. People who misuse words often mismanage influence. And people who play with words often pay the price in relationships, business, or credibility. But successful people understand that with influence comes responsibility. They don't just speak because they can. They speak because they must. And when they don't need to speak, they remain silent, not out of fear, but out of strength. Because silence can be louder than shouting when it comes from a place of control and clarity. A builder doesn't show off with his hammer. He uses it to build something of lasting value. In the same way, successful people don't use words to decorate moments. They use words to define legacy. They use words to draw boundaries. They use words to set direction. They use words to call things into being. Their words are never wasted. Every conversation is an investment. Every statement is an assignment. Every declaration is a design. So if you want to grow, learn from their restraint. Learn the discipline of measured speech. Learn to ask, does this need to be said? Does this build or break? Does this match where I'm going? If not, stay silent. Because every word you speak either reinforces your foundation or weakens your structure. And when your words carry weight, your silence becomes powerful. Successful people know, when words are used with wisdom, they become the tools that build the future. Vision is a sacred thing. It's not for public entertainment. It's not for casual display. Vision is fragile in its early stages, and even more dangerous in its powerful stages. That's why successful people guard their vision with silence. They understand that the more you talk, the more you expose what was meant to be protected. Not everyone around you can handle your vision. Not everyone around you is supposed to understand it. Some will mock it. Some will copy it, some will fight it, some will delay it, so the wise remain silent, not because they are hiding, but because they are protecting. When a builder receives the blueprint for a skyscraper, he doesn't announce every measurement to the world. He builds it quietly, stone by stone. When a farmer plants a seed, he doesn't keep digging it up to prove that something's happening. He knows that silence is part of the process. Vision grows in secret before it shines in public. Successful people have learned this principle. They don't talk prematurely, they don't post every move, they don't explain every detail, because to them, vision is not a marketing campaign, it's a mandate. And mandates require maturity. The more you speak, the more people feel invited to comment, criticize, or contaminate what you're carrying. Vision is vulnerable to pollution, and not every attack comes from enemies. Sometimes it comes from excessive exposure. Talking too much about what you're planning to do invites battles you're not assigned to fight. It opens doors you're not supposed to walk through yet. Successful people don't want every battle. They want the right battle. And silence positions them for clarity. Silence filters the noise so they can hear what matters. Silence gives them the wisdom to know when to engage and when to ignore. There is a kind of stillness that speaks louder than noise. It says, I know what I'm doing. I don't have to prove it. I don't need your permission. I don't require your validation. That stillness is not arrogance. It's alignment. Successful people are not trying to be mysterious for attention. They are trying to stay aligned for execution. They know that vision is expensive and distraction is deadly. They'd rather be focused and misunderstood than loud and misdirected. They'd rather be underestimated and strategic than visible and vulnerable. Look at nature. The most powerful growth often happens underground. The tallest trees have the deepest roots, and roots grow in silence. The foundation is formed in quiet. You don't see it. You don't celebrate it. But it's what holds the entire structure. In the same way, vision must take root in silence before it rises in strength. Successful people stay quiet because they're working on their roots. They're growing depth so that they can handle the height. They are not interested in shallow fame. They are building something that will last, and that kind of construction requires privacy, patience, and protection. When you speak too soon, you expose your vision to people who can't see it clearly. And when they can't see it, they will try to shape it into something else. They will impose their fears, their doubts, their insecurities on your direction. That's why the silence of the successful is not avoidance. It's warfare. It's choosing the right moment to speak, the right time to act, the right battle to fight, because not all battles are yours. And if you spend energy defending something that hasn't even been born yet, you may kill it with exhaustion. Silence also reveals who's really with you. When you're not talking, people show themselves, their motives become clear, their intentions are exposed. Successful people don't speak to test loyalty. They stay silent and watch who stays consistent. Because anyone can celebrate your words, but only the right people will support your process. Only the aligned will walk with you in the quiet stages. That's why silence is a filter. It separates the real from the fake, the committed from the curious, the focused from the noisy. So when you see successful people speaking less, understand this. They are not avoiding life. They are preparing for it. They are not weak. They are wise. They are not afraid. They are aware. They've chosen silence not as a retreat, but as a weapon, a tool, a boundary, a shield. Because they know their vision is too important to be wasted in conversation. They speak only when it moves them closer to purpose, and they stay silent when it protects the process. Silence is not just a strategy for protection, it's also a tool of revelation. When a wise person stays quiet, they are not disengaged, they are observing. In silence, people reveal who they are. They expose their intentions, their priorities, their insecurities, and their character without knowing it. Successful people speak less because they've learned that silence invites honesty from others. It creates a space where truth rises, masks fall, and motives become clear. When you constantly talk, you give others a blueprint of how to manipulate you. You tell them what you want, what you fear, what you expect. You hand them your emotional map, but when you speak less, you remain unpredictable. You retain control. You force others to reveal themselves before they know where you stand. That's why successful people are often misunderstood. They don't show all their cards. They listen, they watch, they wait. Because while others are busy broadcasting, the wise are busy reading the room. In conversations, silence becomes a mirror. People fill it with their true selves. They expose their envy, their ambition, their loyalty, or lack of it. They talk themselves into confession. You don't even have to ask, just give them space and the truth comes out. Successful people have mastered this. They use their silence as a spotlight shining on others' intentions. They don't assume, they observe, they don't react, they record, and when the time is right, they move with clarity, not confusion. This is especially true in leadership. The best leaders don't always speak first. They let others speak. They let others show their vision, their heart, their spirit. A leader who talks too much creates followers who hide their real thoughts. But a leader who listens develops a team that reveals its true potential. Successful people understand this. They create silence not as a void, but as a test. Will you speak truth in the quiet, or will you expose your own noise? In business, the one who listens holds the advantage. In negotiations, silence is a tactic. The first to speak often loses leverage, but the quiet one gathers information, reads between the lines, and strikes with precision. They aren't rushing to be heard. They're positioning themselves to win. The successful are slow to speak not because they're unsure, but because they're calculating, not emotionally, but strategically. They've learned that timing and tone carry more weight than volume. In relationships, too, silence is powerful. It reveals intentions with shocking clarity. The person who truly loves you will remain consistent even when you're not constantly validating them. The person who's in it for themselves will grow distant when your silence doesn't feed their ego. Speaking less exposes what attention may have been hiding. Successful people let silence test loyalty. Let silence test friendship. Let silence test the foundation, because words can decorate feelings, but silence tests depth. Even in conflict, silence is a tool. The one who stays calm, who doesn't react emotionally, who waits to speak until clarity comes, holds the upper hand. They are not being passive, they are being precise. They know that some things said in anger are irreversible, some arguments are unnecessary, some responses are traps, so they say nothing, not because they are weak, but because they value peace more than point. They wait until emotion passes and wisdom speaks. That's how battles are won before they begin. Another reason the successful speak less is because they've discovered the strength of mystery. When people don't know what you're thinking, they respect you more. When you don't always explain yourself, you force others to think deeper. Silence creates distance, but not always in a negative way. It creates space for evaluation, space for growth, space for others to step up. Successful people have learned that they don't have to fill every silence. Sometimes the silence is the message. Sometimes the silence speaks louder than any statement ever could. The wise are not always the loudest in the room, but they are always the most aware. Their awareness comes from listening, watching, waiting, and letting others speak first, because what people say when they think you're not reacting, that's their truth, that's their blueprint. That's what helps the successful navigate relationships, partnerships, and opportunities with sharp discernment. They don't get played easily because they've already read the script while others were talking. So yes, successful people speak less, not to isolate, not to dominate, not to manipulate, but to evaluate, to discern, to allow others to expose their truth. They speak when needed, but listen always, and in doing so, they protect their peace, their purpose, and their progress.